Hello, students. It's your teacher, Dr. Lynn Daniel, PhD, EDS. I'm the self-care evangelist, and I am your instructor in our self-care and social emotional wellness through the lens of Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory here on the Hillman TikTok. I am your instructor this spring 2025 semester, and we are in week 3. So today, we are going to look at how to conduct case study research. I'm going to take you on a dive on this journey because you're already doing many of the steps of case study research. And so let's formalize it so that when you feel, at any point in time that you would like to take your observations, what you've learned during this course, and really formalize your study, then you will know how to do it. Because right now in this course, you have your journal, and in that journal, you are reflecting. You're thinking about your self-care actions. You are critiquing them. You're looking at them closely through observation, through reflection. You're doing things to understand their effectiveness or their outcomes for you. And you're taking a lot of steps already to build a mindset that's necessary for conducting research. So, you're on this journey. And so today's course is going to show you using the 6th edition of Robert K. Yin's Case Study Research and Applications, Design and Methods book. This is the primary book that I built the PowerPoint off of the content of this book. And so that's going to be our primary source. Okay. And then there are other sources as well. I did pull from Dr. Kakali Bhattacharya's book on bias because she teaches us I'm looking through my notes. She teaches us how to embrace researcher bias in self case studies, like we're examining ourselves. And so her book is Fundamentals of Qualitative Research, published by Routledge in 2017. Okay, so let us begin today's course. Yesterday I went kind of long. And so yesterday I went over an hour. I want to keep these videos as close to under an hour as I can so I can upload them onto TikTok for those students. And students, I've also put yesterday's video in the course. So you have the recording, and it's on YouTube as well for those of you who are not in the course, but I did turn on uh, commercials on YouTube, so you will deal with commercials. Okay. All right, you all. Here we go. Case Study Research Designs and Methods, a Beginner's Guide, based on Robert K. Yin's work, presented by me, your instructor. So a case study is an empirical inquiry that investigates a contemporary phenomenon like an event, an observation. And you do this in depth and within a real world context. This is how Yin defines it. And I did provide those references for you. So if you do purchase this book, or if you do find it on a secondhand store online or locally, you'll know exactly where to go find the reference, what page number. A case study is used to explore complex social, organizational, and behavioral issues, and it is used when the research questions are how and why. So you're going to have some how questions. So you right now, or those of you enrolled in the course, you are conducting your case study on yourself concerning your self-care and social emotional wellness. So you can ask something like, how is this course impacting my self-care or something of that manner. Okay. Or why did I incorporate some self-care practice? Okay. Or something of that nature. And then another aspect of case study research is you're looking at contextual conditions and when they are relevant. So your actions, self-care actions, are within the context, they're contextual conditions, and they are relevant to what you're studying. So a case study, this means a case study is an appropriate approach for you. It's a reasonable, solid way to conduct the study. Characteristics of case study research. Multiple sources of evidence are collected over the time. Case studies are, they look at real life events in the settings. They're focused on those things. You do propose a theoretical proposition to guide what you're doing. So we in the course are using Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory. So that is your theoretical framework that you will use then, and you know what the framework includes. It examines the development of an individual within various ecosystems and how those ecosystems shape the person through through living. Okay. So you will use Bronfenbrenner's theoretical propositions to guide what you're looking at yourself, in your family, in your school, in your work, in your church, in your larger community, within the laws, in the culture of your life, and over time. All right. And then you are the scholar and you're studying the implementation of new self-care approaches in your life. That's what we're doing in this course. Okay. And that's our example. A scholar is studying the implementation of a new self-care approach in their life. That's like an example. So here are the types of case study designs. You have exploratory, descriptive, explanatory, single case, and according to Yin. Now I know there's like a reflective, um, according to Jennifer Esposito and Venus Evans Winter, intersectional qualitative research is another form. There are other forms that develop over time because scholars will then propose their ideas, right? They will conceptualize something and then they'll propose it and put it forth. So let's look at exploratory is used to pilot studies or to conduct preliminary research. All right. Descriptive study is used to provide a detailed account of a phenomenon, of an event, of a fact, of a pattern. Explanatory case studies examines causal relationships such as the impact of leadership on employee performance, the impact of self-care on the microsystem, the family system, or an individual in a dysfunctional family system or something. A single case study versus a multiple case study. Yin addresses these on page 55 in the text. So here's what he says. Let's see. Replication, not sampling logic for multiple case studies. So what are the potential multiple case studies design? The same case study may contain more than a single case. When this occurs, the case study has a multiple case study design, and such designs have increased in frequency in recent years. A common example is a case study of a small group of public versus private hospitals. Each hospital would be the subject of its own fieldwork, and the multiple case study would first cover each hospital as a single case study before arriving at findings and conclusion across the individual case studies. Okay, so in case you want to do that, maybe you want to, and he charted it out on page 58 in a graph. Okay, and he provided you the procedures there for conducting a multiple case study. Moving on. Okay, I want to slow down a little bit because I mean, so let's talk a little bit about, and I'm going to go refer to my notes for these because I made these notes to provide you all like further explanations so you can have these. So these will be in the course so you can access them, download them, and see them and use them. Okay, I should have numbered these pages. Good night, because they're all over. Okay, so using a case study, excuse me, guys, for a minute. Okay, here we go. Case study analysis techniques. So you can look at pattern matching to compare predicted and actual patterns in data to strengthen the validity. And this speaks to the validity slide. So I'm totally ahead of myself. Let's look at strengths. The strengths of a case study includes rich, detailed understanding, provides in-depth insights into the context and complexity of a case. The strength of case study it provides is flexible use of multiple evidence sources such as integrating interviews, observations, documents, and artifacts for comprehensive analysis. Another strength of the case study, it provides effective real-world complex issues. It's effective for looking at real-world complex issues. It's useful for exploring social, organizational, and policy-related problems in a natural setting. Those are the strengths of case study as a methodology, as a research approach. The limitations of case study, it can be time consuming. It is time consuming. It is resource intensive. It requires extensive data collection, which you have been doing since week 0, and we are currently into week 3 at the end, moving into week 4. So if you've been collecting data frequently over this time, you already see how time consuming it can be. Because every day, if you're journaling every day, or if you're taking photos of yourself or of something that ties into your self-care, the intensiveness of the time is just you being aware that everything that you do matters. So, what are you going to collect from what you're doing from your day? And that then is determined on what aspect of your self-care do you want to focus on. So if you're focusing on maintaining peace, emotional peace or psychological peace or something like that, then the data you collect, the images you take, the songs you write, the poems you write, the paintings you do, the conversations you have, they will be centered around that main focus, because more than likely your question that you've developed, or that, when you're conducting a case study, you do start with the question that helps guide you. And so you think of, well, what is it from this class that I want? Oh, I want to maintain my peace. And you discovered that in week 0. What the main thing, what was important to you, right? And so that helps you to know, to understand what is meant by this time consuming, intensive data collection, extensive data collection. And then you do need to be organized. You do need a data collecting tool, and then you need a data storage tool. So, where are you putting your images? Where are you collecting and keeping your journal? Where are you putting the songs you're writing, the songs you're singing, the music you're making? You're recording this somewhere digitally. Where are you storing it? How are you able, can you retrieve all of your data like quickly? Is everything organized so that it's labeled? You have the dates and the times, or the names, or what the identifiers, you've got it labeled. So, you know, these are, if you're not doing these things, because I do recall telling you all to make sure you are dating your journal entry. So if you haven't been doing that, start doing that now. Start making sure that everything has some sort of timestamp, and that could include, of course, the date, which includes the month, day, and year. It could also include the time. It could also include the location. It could also include information like the purpose. What are you looking for? Or the mood or the mindset, whatever that big thing that you decided you were going to focus on, like something that relates back to that. And so you're already managing the extensiveness of the data collection. That's the point I'm making. I've just spent 3 minutes explaining that, but that's the point I'm making here, because this is seen as a limitation. And a limitation is like something, an adverse thing related, that pertains and is related to that construct or that form of data collection, that form of study. Okay. And then another thing about it being time consuming and resource intensive is this is over a long period of time. And Bronfenbrenner has already helped us to understand the relevance and the importance of time. So you already understand that what you're doing is going to incorporate you and your development over time of days, weeks, months, seasons, years, even. Okay. So even though that's a limitation, I think if you've been following me and acting on what I've been saying, I think you're going to be able to manage this well. And if you haven't been, then just go back and revisit those weeks, starting at week 0, and then incorporate the management steps. Okay. Now, here's another limitation of case study: the risk of researcher bias. And I've already told you all about this, like the subjectivity and data interpretation can influence the findings, but of course they will. And then we'll just go to Dr. Bhattacharya. I've got notes on what she says about it. She, Dr. Kakali Bhattacharya, and I will add her name so you all can find her. Kakali. It sounds like broccoli, but it's spelled Kakali, Kakali. And then Bhattacharya is Bhattacharya. So I'll put it in there because I want you all to go find her work online. And I want you all to understand that, she's very strong minded in restorative and justice oriented type of work. That's what's coming to my mind. Like, she's really heavy on people, researchers of color, understanding our voice, our lived experiences, and how it shapes us as a researcher, and how we cannot divorce ourselves, our identity, to conduct research, especially when it speaks to our community and when it will impact change and improvement for our community. So, um, in some forms of qualitative research, bias is inevitable due to the personal nature of the study. And you can look in her book on page 5. Her book, Fundamentals of Qualitative Research. Rutledge is the publisher, 2017 is the date. And then, so I'm going to give you all these notes so you can understand what I am saying. Okay, now that was a long side step. Let me get back to the slide. So the 5 components of research design. So yes, you're going to have a research question that you may not have right now, or you may have it loosely, and you can always work on getting it tight and right. Okay, so you're going to make a proposition of some sort related to self-care and you. You'll have units of analysis. How are you going to analyze? And you will have things to analyze. Logic linking data to propositions. So you'll think logically in ways that link your information that you've collected back to the proposition that you made. Your pictures, your journals, everything. And then you'll have criteria to help you interpret your data. And then the last step, you're going to want to share out your data some kind of way. But listen, that part, sharing out your data, is really up to you. Like, I know when I was going through the loss, a big loss in the early 2000s, what I did was I leaned on my understanding of songwriting, of music theory, because I had taken some music theory courses many years before, and I had, I mean, not like an expert music theorist. Like, I was in the choir, and we had to take that, right, as a way to understand choir. And so I use my background in music to make a music project and to get involved in a music community. And so I did an EP of, like, I don't know, 6 to 8 songs. And I put it out there. I shared it. It's still on my YouTube channel. Right. And so that is what is meant by sharing. You share with the community if that's where you want to go. Okay. All right. So here's an example. So studying how remote work affects employee productivity. And after you do everything, all of these steps, and then that last step, you'll share it out. How do you do that? In a report, or in a PowerPoint or something, in a podcast, in a blog post. All right. So then you're going to, again, collect your evidence. Now, another form of evidence that I really haven't talked a lot about would be interviews, the third one on here. Like interviewing the people in your microsystems and in your ecosystems, your microsystem, your mesosystem, your exosystem, your macrosystem, right? All of them, your chronosystem. And then the archival records, the second point on here. So you could, like, if you want to look at, well, how did laws of my time impact? Because I was born during the time before, I was born during, technically, Jim Crow was still in effect. Yeah, because the Civil Rights Acts of 64 and 65, I was 3 years old and 4 years old when those came out. So I could go to public records and statistics and start looking at those laws, things that were in place in my time, in my city, in my country, that in my state, that impacted Definitely it impacted me, because if it limited my parents' mobility or engagement as a citizen in the world, in the country, in the state, in the city, then it impacted me. So that's another step that I might take, is to do that step 2. Okay, so back to step 3, or point 3 of evidence: interviews. Yeah, just talking to your relatives, especially your elders. And structured mean you go in with, you already have an idea of design, like you consider the questions you're going to ask. You you really take time to develop some questions that will go down deep, and then go out wide. And then there are other, like, methods for constructing questions and for constructing interviews. And then unstructured is a little more loose. Like, you may have a guiding, your main question or a main point, but then you just let it move naturally, organically, as guided, as dictated by the interviewee. Okay. And those are more natural. I mean, either way, if the person being interviewed doesn't want to be interviewed, they will stall it and make it a difficult task. But if your interviewee is a willing participant, which they should be, unless they said yes and then they changed their mind, or not having a good day or something, um, you know, it should go well. It should. Okay. Direct observations, you're doing that already, because you're examining yourself and the ecosystems around you. Just be more observant about it, right? Participant observation, that's you. You're the researcher. What are you seeing? And then, to as the researcher, you can ask people in your ecosystem, what do they observe? Physical artifacts, we've talked about those. Okay, moving on. So according to Yin, on page 81, he goes into details about using a case study protocol. So on 81, he shows this diagram. First off, at the very beginning of the book, he shows this diagram on how to even set up this study. And you will see that, if you choose to get this book, you will see how you plan it, you design it, you prepare it, you collect, you analyze, you share. And so right now we're looking at collecting the data. So again, we go back to maintaining your database. So you do need a storage space for your data. You need a chain of evidence. So that shows what you're collecting and its priority, or how you collected it, and time stamped, and those types of things. Even, I guess, you could include in here, of course, their meanings, the significance of the data, and that type of thing. Yin says, ask good questions, be a good listener, and stay adaptive. Because he says, if you ask good questions, it will help you to interpret the answers fairly. If you are a good listener, you will not be trapped by existing ideologies or preconceptions. If you stay adaptive, you will be responsive to newly encountered situations, and you will see them as opportunities and not as threats. Okay. He says, have a firm grasp on the issues that you're studying, even when you are in exploratory mode. He also says, conduct your research ethically from a professional standpoint, but even so, be sensitive to contrary evidence. Okay. Okay. So, I highlighted some notes in here from when I was using this. Um, Let me see what else he says. Um, Gain informed consent. If you are going to include others in this study, ask them and have them sign a document. Like if you're doing a formal study, you write out an informed consent. You go over it with them. You share it with them. You make sure they clearly understand it, and they will sign it. From all persons who may be a part of your case study, alerting them to the nature of your case study and formally soliciting their volunteerism in participating in the study. So even with your family, I would encourage you to do that, even though it's an informal case study. Right? Protecting those who participate in your study from any harm, including avoiding the use of any deception in your study. And you protect them by using pseudonyms. You can give them a different name, by shielding their identity through experiences, especially if someone experiences something that will it is so rare that is definitely going to make people know, oh, that she's talking about Jack, that time he was swimming and got swallowed by a whale. Like, Jack is probably the only guy who's gotten swallowed by a whale. I could change his name to Mark, but if I don't shield through my writing up of his experience, if I don't change some things, people are going to know I'm talking about Jack, even though I say Mark. So, yeah, you have to protect your participants. So, those of you talking to family members and they're giving you sensitive details of something, you may have to consider ways to shield that experience a bit. Protecting the privacy and confidentiality of those, taking special precautions that might be needed to protect especially vulnerable groups. Don't research children. I avoid anyone under the age of 18. Just avoid them. Select participants equitably so that no group of people are unfairly included or excluded. That's a big one. So, when I was designing my doctoral study, those are all the things that you learn to do. Like, and it's sort of like you know it, so you don't teach it or you don't speak it or you forget it because it's so innate. But yes, these are very the ethics of the study. They're very important. The study must be ethical. Okay. So that part is not, the ethics of the study is solid, concrete. It does not change. And the protection of the people, if you're interviewing or using anybody else, protecting them is primary. You must. Okay. Triangulation is using multiple sources to confirm your findings. So you're doing that. And then you, of course, back to interviews, observations, surveys. Surveys are common methods of studying engagement. Now, I have a student on here, but I don't, I don't, I have not um, talked directly to students. I try to avoid talking directly to students. I will speak to my experience as a teacher of students. You know, that's important. But again, I'm hitting this hard, right? I hope you all get what I'm saying. Okay, let me drink some water. Got lipstick, this purple grape lipstick all over my. Okay. Construct validity, construct validity. How is the study put together? So you use multiple sources of evidence. Internal validity. How do you look at relationships? External validity. How do you use theory-based generalizations when you're looking at your studies? Validity. Reliability. How, looking at that detailed protocol, right, to make this reliable. So you're following the protocol for a case study so that whatever you come up with is reliable. So here's an example. Using standardized interview questions ensures reliability. Okay. All right. So now that you've collected all your data, like you have all these pictures, you have these interviews, you did some surveys, you did some artwork, like you journal your uh, exercise schedule, everything. Now you're going to go and lay these things out and look for patterns because you're looking for meaning. So pattern matching on 143 yen says pattern matching. Let's see. He's looking at the relationships of citizens on patrol. Is this case study, and it's looking at crime prevention activities. So on page 143, personal security when doing field work is what's being talked on here. And they're looking at above that, it sounds like they're looking at the success of the police patrol far exceeded his original expectations. So they're looking at the pattern that they noticed. Okay. Explanation building using an iterative process. So you're going back and forth to refine your explanations. And that's another thing, like I recall during my doctoral dissertation study when I was analyzing the data, it was a lot of going back and forth because I had data, on the cards, and I was moving them to different spots, different categories that I had come up with. And then I was like, no, this seems like this belongs in a totally different category that I haven't even identified. And so that process does take a lot of time. And Kakali Bhattacharya has some really good tips and approaches for how to do that, how to analyze. She's very good at helping you uh, to look at the data and not just at the surface. She likes the researcher to learn how to revisit the data through various lenses, asking specific types of questions to get to hidden meaning or the deeper meanings that you'll note through patterns, that you'll note through themes, but even deeper than just what pops up obviously, right? So this is a part of the time consuming aspect as well. All right, time series analysis to examine trends over time. Yeah, yeah. You'll revisit this thing more than once. Your data, as you're breaking it down and trying to see what it means, you'll look at it maybe on Tuesday, then you'll look at it again on Saturday, then you'll look at it again on Sunday, and then Monday, and then Tuesday, and then you'll take a break to really think about what you saw in those patterns and themes and meanings and right. So yeah, time series analysis, and then logic models to help you link the information, the processes, and the outcomes. Now, we've already talked about the strengths and limitations. So A case study research is very good at providing rich, detailed understandings. A case study research is flexible. It allows you to use multiple sources of evidence and is quite suitable for real world complex issues. But the limitations are time consuming and resource intensive. The risk of your bias, because you can't help that, and then the generalizability of it, you might have limitations on that based on what it is you're studying and what you've come up with from your evidence. All right, again, let's look at these ethical considerations. So, you don't need an informed consent on yourself because you've given yourself informed consent to conduct your study. But if you are going to involve anybody from your ecosystems in your study, I would recommend that the individuals are over the age of 18 and that you write out an informed consent form, or if you read it to them, you have them. I would write it out. I would read it to them and just have them to read it silently. And then if you need examples, there are many examples. You just Google it, right? You go to Google Scholar. You go to Google Scholar and you can look at examples of informed consent forms. And then if you don't find them on Google Scholar, just go to regular Google and Google examples of informed consent forms. Okay. Um, Confidentiality protects your participants' identities and sensitive data about them. So be aware and be vigilant about that. And then again, avoiding bias maintains objectivity in the analysis, but as I've already told you, when it comes to bias, when you're conducting your own case study, you're going to embrace your researcher bias because you're bringing your whole self into the study. You recognize the value of your personal experiences and your perspective. And research bias is considered a natural and inevitable aspect of qualitative research, particularly in self-case studies where the researcher is both subject and researcher. You can refer to Bhattacharya 2017, page 40. A self-case study involves the researchers deeply reflecting on their own experiences, perspectives, and personal growth. So in this framework, research subjectivity is a strength as it highlights contextual and emotional insights. And you can check Dr. Bhattacharya's 2017 publication on page 50. Um, by acknowledging your own bias, you are being transparent. You offer greater clarity and trustworthiness in your research, in your work. You acknowledge your bias and you reflect on how your experiences influence interpretation and how they provide deeper insights into your study. And then the power dynamics, Dr. Bhattacharya notes that researchers must be mindful of the power they hold as the subject in self-case studies, using this awareness for critical self-reflection. So the takeaway from the notes I have, in case studies, researcher bias is not something to be eliminated, but embraced. It shapes the research narrative and unveils valuable insights about the researcher's own personal journey and transformation. The source is Bhattacharya, 2017, Fundamentals of Qualitative Research, published by Routledge. So you introduce your background, your problem, your methods, your design, data collection, your analysis, your findings, your discussions, where you interpret what you found and their implications on you, on your future, on your family, on your ecosystems, and then you conclude, you summarize, and recommend. So for further reading, I want you to pick up this book if you want, or you can borrow it from a library and read it, or there might be sections of it online. So you can require careful planning and rigorous data collections and a systemic approach to your analysis. And here is the main publication that I use for today's presentation. So thank you all so much for being here for our session for week 3. Week 3, we're looking at the connections of our ecosystems. Let me see if I can't. I am going to go to Google Classroom and go in there and tell you exactly what we are doing. And I better hurry up because I don't want to go over an hour. So we're finishing up week 3. And week 3, the title of week 3 is Understanding Interactions Between Your Ecosystems. It says understanding interactions between your microsystems. It should say ecosystems because you're looking at all of them. And then inside of there, in the course, you have yesterday's video, you have promoting burnout prevention, and you have Bronfenbrenner's image on his ecological systems theory. I will also include today's video in there for you without commercials because I'm going to upload it straight from my laptop. When I put it on YouTube, it will have commercials. When I put it on TikTok, it will not have commercials. If you have any questions, concerns, you can message me right wherever you're watching this video. All right. Be blessed. Bye.